Basil Hugh Banghart Jr., aka The Owl, an American criminal thief and a prison escape artist. The man who excelled at overstepping the walls of the most notorious prisons in the United States until his conviction of a kidnapping with his friend Roger Towey, where he spent more than 20 years in prison until proven innocent. In today's video, we're gonna go through some of the most spectacular crimes Basil was involved in, how he managed to plan and escape prison multiple times, and how he was unfairly imprisoned in a kidnapping case. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. Basil Hugh Banghart was born in Bearville, Michigan in 1901, and looking at his education history, he dropped out of school after 1 year of college to become a professional car thief. He stole more than 100 cars in the Detroit area before his arrest in 1929. The first escape of the Owl comes months into his sentence at the Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. Escaping from a window washing detail, he leaped 25 feet from a window. He was washing over the prison's wall and ran through the marsh on the other side. Banghart was able to go as far as Montana, but was recaptured and returned to prison. A year later, he would make his second escape, but seems like the Owl was not made to roam in the daylight. He was caught trying to steal a car in Pittsburgh in October 1928. This time, Banghart was brought back to prison by the U.S. Marshals. They escorted him to a federal building where he was left alone in an office for a few minutes. Banghart used a phone to call the local police, claiming that he was a federal agent who had been assaulted and beaten by his prisoner Basil Banghart. He continued claiming that Banghart had escaped after handcuffing him and described the U.S. Marshal that was escorting him as a dangerous armed felon and a police imposter. When police arrived moments later, they took the escort into custody while Banghart escaped in the confusion of the situation he caused. He didn't stay on the run for long. Banghart was soon recaptured in February 1930 and brought back to Leavenworth. As fast as he was recaptured, he would run away once more, leaving everyone speechless. This time he was captured in January 1932 for armed robbery and was sent to the South Bend, Indiana jail. And of course, he would unsurprisingly escape once more by throwing paper in a guard's face, then stole his machine gun to shoot his way out. After his escape from South Bend, Indiana jail, Banghart headed south and eventually made his way to Chicago, where he joined up with Roger Towey's organization. Towey was a gang leader and a veteran bootlegger from the days of Prohibition. When Banghart joined his gang, Towey was then in the midst of a fierce rivalry with Frank Nitti over labor racketeering. Banghart became a major asset to Towey during this time, and no doubt an active participant in Towey's war with the Chicago outfit. However, there is only one recorded incident in which Banghart was specially involved in. That incident was on the 31st of January 1933. Jimmy O'Brien, who was one of Towey's Union men and one of the latest victims of the Towey-Nitti feud, was killed by Nitti's gunman in front of a garage nightclub. That's when a week later a man identified as Banghart returned to the nightclub, where he stepped out of a sedan car and tossed a bomb through the front doors of the club. No one was injured, but the club itself was heavily damaged. In July 1933, Chicago outfit staged the kidnapping to one of their members who was called Jake Factor, aka the Barber, hoping to postpone his extradition to stand trial for fraud in Great Britain, as well as rid themselves of rival bootlegger Roger Towey, on whom the kidnapping would be blamed. The members of the British Consulate refused to believe the story and won a judgment for Factor's extradition from the US Supreme Court. In desperation, Factor and the Chicago mob tried to make the kidnapping more legitimate by arranging a small pickup with the supposed kidnappers. Banghart and his partner Charles Connors, aka Ice Wagon, were brought into the plan at this point. Hired to be the bagman, they were told that all they needed was to pick up the money, make it look real, and they could keep the ransom money. On the 15th of August, the two came to the scheduled time on Manheim Road outside the Chicago city limits. As soon as they arrived, they found an army of 300 Chicago police officers and FBI agents waiting for them. To make matters worse, inside the ransom package was only $500. In spite of the obvious betrayal, Banghart and Connors surprised everyone by escaping after an intense shooting at the police officers. Despite the setup, Banghart and Connors didn't bother to seek revenge against the Chicago outfit and instead went on the run. On November 15, 1933, they teamed up with COSTNER and LUDWIG SCHMIDT, aka the Dutch, to hijack a United States mail truck carrying $100,000 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Banghart and COSTNER were eventually captured by the time the second trial for Factor's kidnapping was held on February 13, 1934. Facing long prison sentences for the Charlotte mail truck robbery, both men agreed to testify for the prosecution. Although COSTNER had not been involved in the ransom pickup, when Connors was found murdered on March 14, he took Connors' place and falsely stated that he and Banghart had been hired for the Factor kidnapping by Roger Towie. When Banghart took the stand, however, he denied these claims and tried to explain that the kidnapping was staged. Banghart's testimony was largely ignored, and he, along with Towie and 2 others, were convicted and received 99-year sentences. Years had passed, and so were the unsuccessful appeals, but on the 9th of October, the Owl will make his last escape from Juliet alongside Towie, Edward Derlock, Marcel Knilson, William Stewart St. Clair, McLenery, and James O'Connor. The FBI immediately joined the manhunt, justifying its involvement, charging that the convicts had violated the federal draft law by not informing Selective Service of their change of address. Soon after their escape, Banghart and Towie were suspected of taking part in a robbery at Melrose Park, Illinois on December 19, which netted $20,000, although no charges were brought against them. McNerney and O'Connor were killed in a gun battle with federal agents less than 2 weeks after their escape, and Towie, Edward Derlock, Marcel Knilson, William Stewart were captured at a nearby address on December 29, 1942. Edgar Hoover, who was the first director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, observed the raid and took part in what would be his last personal arrest. For that escape, the convicts were given longer jail sentences, and on the 2nd of January 1943, Banghart was brought back to Stateville, where he was placed in solitary confinement. He was then transferred and escorted by 18 federal marshals to Alcatraz, where he spent the rest of his time in the prison kitchen, working with former Public Enemy No. 1 Alvin Karpis. In the bakery, Alvin was the only public enemy out of 4 in the US history who was captured alive. Banghart and Karpis were jokingly referred to by inmates as the Karpis Kitchen Crew. They learned to produce wine and various alcoholic beverages from cherry pie juices and different material in the kitchen. Karpis later wrote in his memoirs, "The challenge was to avoid becoming an alcoholic." In 1954, things will turn out good for Banghart, and that's when a federal judge declared for the Factor kidnapping as a fraud, and that Banghart and Towie were most likely being wrongly convicted, involving in the Chicago outfit and corrupt Chicago officials. In 1959, Banghart was transferred back to Stateville. Eventually, his kidnapping conviction was overturned and the mail robbery charges were dropped for the time that he had served. After a life that was full of chaos and crimes, Basil Banghart was released the following year at the age of 60. After all these years of crime and escapes, he was finally reunited with his longtime girlfriend Mae Blackhawk. He would also receive a small inheritance from his aunt 15 years before. The Owl finally retired and left that bloody life behind in the past and moved to a small island in Puget Sound. So do you guys believe in second chances? And that guys like Basil Banghart could have a second chance to alter their lives for the better, even if they left some Hollywood events kind of stuff? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos of crimes and mysteries and much more interesting stories. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.